Sarah Jane, welcome to Just Jump. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brit.
Well, real privilege, and I think we're going to have a bit of fun with this because it touches on a subject that no one really wants to talk about. It's kind of hidden behind the curtains, and or people are gossiping amongst their friends and complaining about their other half in some certain way. I want to kick this off with a game called Mediation or Escalation.
Okay.
So I'll read out a few classic expat couple conflict scenarios, and you'll just tell me what's best solved with mediation or heading straight for escalation, potentially. Ready?
I am.
Monsieur bought a €5,000 ride-on lawnmower without asking. Mediation or escalation?
Mediation.
She wants the kids to go to French school. He wants to homeschool with a Texas curriculum.
Definitely mediation.
They agreed to move to France together. Then, sadly, he got homesick.
Ideally, mediation, but we know that in most cases it doesn't happen like that.
She wants to renovate the barn into a yoga studio. He's planning to turn it into a whiskey bar.
Mediation.
This is actually I found this on Facebook.
Go on.
So I don't know the context as to why this is played out like this, but basically he found out that she started learning Italian secretly.
And he wasn't happy.
Well, yeah, when confronted, it was just like, but why? We're in France. So yeah, I may have to report back on that and see if there's been some updates on the thread.
Please do.
Yeah, I guess insinuating she's planning to leave and move to Italy for one reason or another.
An Italian lover.
I'm guessing that's mediation too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I'll say mediation for everything.
Well, that's the point, though, isn't it? I suppose my message behind this podcast was meant to be for. Sadly, there are quite a lot of divorces that take place, in the expat community because there's been a big change and maybe reality of things hasn't met the expectations everyone had. But sadly, not enough people reach out for mediation soon enough. So that's why I was excited to bring you on, and we can elaborate on all these topics.
Thank you.
So I suppose to kick things off, in your experience and expertise, why is expat life such fertile ground for relationship strain and pressure?
Well, like you've just said, the reality is very different from the dreams that people had when they decided to leave everything on the whim sometimes just to move to France because they saw a program on telly and it looked really, really amazing. So usually it's the reality of life. And then sometimes it's just life. Maybe it would have been the same if they stayed in England, but just life surprises you. But yeah, I think most of the time it's just that it doesn't live up to what you expected when you moved. And maybe you may have had problems before, and when you move, it's even worse because you have to adapt to everything when you move abroad.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. People say, we're all products of our environment, and so then I suppose, have you seen people make a big move to another country in kind of like a Hail Mary attempt to rediscover and rekindle that energy for life and that fire in a relationship too? Just sort of hope that, the great wine and cheese help put everyone in a good mood.
exactly. In my generation, it was trying for a third child. The baby that was supposed to glue the couple together.
Yeah.
Maybe nowadays that's a new thing. Oh, it's not working here. We're not happy. Let's move and find happiness elsewhere.
Is it possible that actually does work?
Good question. I think if it's prepared, I think it can work if people are already working on their problems before they move away and they know by moving away, they're solving the problem. They know they're solving some problems.
Yeah.
But like everything, you need preparation and you need to work on. Anyway, you need to work on your couple, whatever happens.
Wherever you are, yeah.
Yeah, it can work if you really want it to work.
So can we talk about the combinations, I suppose, of pressures or sources of tension that you often see expats come to you for?
Well, usually they come when they decided to separate. Usually there's one that's not really ready. One makes the decision and the other doesn't know what's happening to her or him. The pressure is usually there's a distance that starts because either they moved for one of the couple's jobs and the other one doesn't have a job, doesn't speak the language, and finds it difficult to find friends, you know,
Yeah.
fill their days. So that's one example. Sometimes they both leave. And, the typical example is, let's buy a house, redo it, do a Airbnb or, Gîte or whatever. And the strain of, lack of money because it hasn't been planned usually leads to those kinds of strains. And then the problem is you usually have all your money tied up in that property, which is an added strain to the relationship. If neither can actually work in France because they don't speak the language or they don't have the qualifications or whatever, it's an added strain. And then usually one wants to go back, like in one of your examples, is homesick or whatever. And that's when it really gets nasty if you have children.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because when you're doing this, I suppose the temptation, actually, most people don't have that many options. And so you are putting all your eggs in one basket with the master Airbnb plan or whatever. I guess if you can hedge your bets a little bit rather than going so gung-ho, you may reduce the risk of putting added pressure on your relationship too.
Yes, some keep a job in the UK. Nowadays, there are ways around just leaving everything in the UK and moving to France. There are ways of preparing things in advance. But there are situations, the one that happens also is when people decide to retire in France.
Mm.
No, retirement age is a time where people, it's make or break usually because they spend a lot of time together, which they
Yeah.
never did. So if you decide to go to France, it can be even more difficult because, you're in a strange country. Although you have the wine and, and the sunshine, it may not be enough. And that's when that can be difficult also.
As well, yeah. Okay. And so then in actually I've got this for part two. Actually, I'll
Okay.
circle back, but basically I wanted to see, well, how would you, in an ideal world, how would you bring these conversations to the table and help people see the different options that are available, how you can map out a way to dig yourselves out of these, quite difficult and painful phases of life if you're feeling isolated like that. But first things first, I guess, is what makes mediation particularly suited to expat couples generally.
Well, it's as you may well know, if you're an expat in France, if you decide to separate and divorce, if you're married, there will be various jurisdiction involved, England and Wales,
Yeah.
and France. If you don't go through the mediation route, you'll have to, well, people don't agree on where to divorce. So there
Right.
might be what they call, in French, la course à la juridiction, where it's where it's the one that petitions first, according to where their lawyers have told them they would get more from the divorce. So it's a very
Wow.
specific way of thinking. So once you go down that route, it's difficult to come back after. Usually they come to mediation a few years down the line when they've spent a lot of money on legal fees and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. The other thing when you're expats is you have assets in England, in France, and it's all about sorting all that out. Um, for instance, if you're in France and you go and see a judge wouldn't look into your pensions in England. Well, we all know that, well, those who know England know that the pension in England is very different from a retraite in France,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of value. And you really have to have a special report to know how much this pension is going to cost. So if you go to court in France, of course, it won't be looked into it unless you're very lucky and you have
Yeah.
a good lawyer who knows. So it's things like that. If you go to mediation, you can agree on all that. And it's quicker because you look at everything in France. Well, that's what I do basically, is because I have the knowledge of the two countries. I will say, well, you better look into this. I can't give them legal advice, but I will tell them, well, look at everything for France and look at everything for England, and then we can discuss everything. And so you don't leave anything out. And the most important reason why mediation should be attempted, at least in expat situation, is for the children.
Yeah.
Because if the children are born in France and suddenly the parents, one of them wants to go back to England, it's those international relocation cases that can get really messy, and people tend to forget the best interest of their children. So these are, in a nutshell, the reasons why a mediation is better. And it goes back to the roots of mediation. With mediation, the couple make their own decisions. Whereas if you go to court, it's a third party that doesn't know you who will impose a decision on you. And there won't be a winner, because even if you think, oh, yeah, the judge has ruled in my favor, usually it's, it's not
Yeah.
always totally in your favor. So I would advise, unless it's really cases where you can't, because there are cases where you can't do mediation, I would always, encourage, because it's just enables people to be able to communicate when they can't.
Yeah.
When you were saying you're lost, you don't know what to do, well, and you can't talk to each other. Well, mediation helps you to at least talk, the
Yeah.
basics, where are we going to live? How are we going to get organized while we're separating? How do we tell the children? Agree on how do we tell the children? It's things
Yeah.
like that that are so important. And there's one thing, if you only do mediation for those practical things, it will go a long way.
A long way. It's quite a difficult subject, I suppose, but I remember families and friends in and around us in southwest France growing up at the time, and sadly some would separate and people would be moving back and forth. And I do distinctly remember conversations around the dinner table, people saying, well, yeah, we just want to do what's right by the kids ultimately. I'm thinking back, I'm not really sure it was clear what right by the kids necessarily means.
Well, it's very difficult because we all tend to say best interest of the children. However, the idea that you need to take care of yourself to be able to take care of your children. If you're really unhappy in France and you think, oh, I really need to go back. I've got all my friends, all my family in England, and I'll be, better equipped to look after my children. You can understand that, that situation. And it's really difficult in that situation to say, well, to make the other understand that it is in the best interest of the children, because the other one, and it's also a question of why would a mother be more suited to look after her children if she wants to go back to England? Why can't the children stay with the father?
Yeah.
It's all those things that are so difficult because, you can't choose.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like to be a judge making those decisions because it's so difficult. But mediation, I can't tell you that I do a lot of relocation cases because it's what happens the most of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just can't the parents just can't come to a decision and an agreement on that. It's just impossible. Sometimes the only way it works is when one says, okay, go back home, and
Let
say,
go.
but yeah, but because they understand that it's not because you don't see your child, it's very difficult not seeing, as a parent, you may well understand that the idea of not seeing your child every day, it is so difficult. But when you just think, well, yeah, but if I see them, every holiday, I had a couple who decided the child would live with the mother and every single holiday he would go to his father's.
Right.
And it
Okay.
was, easily agreed. I think she had a few weeks in the year because obviously for the father for the whole holidays it was
Yeah, it's
difficult.
quite a
But
chunk. Yeah.
at least they really put the child, the
Yeah.
center, and thought, well, this way he'll have quality time with everybody. And that was it. But I can understand how difficult it is
It's tough,
to
yeah.
let go.
It's tough, for sure. Very, very difficult subjects. I guess people listening and wondering, like, does that process actually look like? Yeah, how does mediation actually start and finish for international couples?
So mediation is a very flexible process. Either you go to see solicitors, avocat or solicitors. They will hopefully encourage you to do mediation.
Yeah.
Just as a way of background, in England now, if you are to petition the family courts, you need to prove that you've attempted mediation.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So either you come to mediation through your solicitors or your avocat. And what I need to say about that is mediation and legal advice lawyers will work together. It's really,
Okay.
I think, the best way. I would never, which tends to be the case in France, I would never solely do mediation. I think you need to be just to know what your rights are. It's
Yeah.
important.
Okay. I
So
see.
either you come through your solicitor or your avocat, or you come through directly, you contact a mediator. Sometimes when people have couple therapy, if the therapist decides that, yeah, there's nothing we can do, they will recommend a mediator. I know
Yeah.
a few therapists that I work with will say, well, get in touch with the mediator and see how it goes from there. And the way I work is I usually tell them to contact me for, a 15 minutes call so that I can explain what mediation is, because usually
Yeah.
people don't know what it is. So it's really about them asking all the questions.
Yeah.
And then I do 2 individual meetings with each couple if they're willing to, and then we start mediation. So mediation, it's voluntary, so you can't force anybody to go to mediation. What happens is sometimes the judge will say more and more, even if you petition the court in France, they will encourage you to get some information about mediation and prove that you've been to a meeting.
Right.
In your local area, they'll give you addresses of local mediators. They don't always speak English, but some do. And so what happens is mediation is all about getting you to discuss things in the presence of a neutral third party, myself, the mediator, who will make sure that you stay respectful of each other, you're able to listen to each other. And so it's not always easy, but
No.
that's what it's all about. For those who, at one point, we were saying no mediation for domestic abuse or things like that. Now, with the mediation online, which I do because I work with international
Yeah.
couples, it is possible to do what we call shuttle mediation, where the couple are different breakout rooms and they don't see each other, they don't speak to each other, and I go between the two. It
Yeah.
happens, even if you do it in person, you can do it also. So it has enabled some people who at some point couldn't even discuss, the basics of separation because they were victim of violence, they were too afraid of talking, etc., and had to go to court. This enables them sometimes to be able to make some little agreements. And the
Gotcha.
mediator has to make sure that they're not under any pressure
Yeah.
to agree to those decisions. So in a nutshell, I don't know if I've answered your
You
question,
have.
but yeah.
Actually, it hits bang on. One of the questions that got sent in to us for this was, I didn't know how to answer. I don't know whether I'm framing this right, so please deconstruct it. But the question was around what's the difference between a mediator and a negotiator? So for context, the man in question said that his wife has asked for mediation on their case, and he felt like the mediator was going to come in and basically argue all of his wife's points, and then he's sort of got to sit like a negotiator in disguise sort of thing, you
Yeah.
know? So what would you have to say to that paradigm?
I'll just briefly tell you what I say to everybody at the beginning of each mediation session. My role is not to make decision. is to be impartial, really impartial. I will reformulate some things just to make sure that everybody understands. You know, sometimes people go on and on, and so I need to but I in no way take sides. I may challenge what you say, but I will never give advice or give you solutions. Or just if you feel like I'm giving you solutions, it's because you've already expressed them, but in another way. But in no way do I negotiate. So you can really compare that between the negotiation in divorces will happen when you have your lawyers next to you and you
Okay.
each negotiate that way. The mediator is about, even if you're in different rooms, you will say to me, I want to go back to England with the kids. I'll go into the other room if they're not in the same room. And I'll say, so your wife wants to go back to England with the kids. What do you think about that? He will say no. And I'll say, do you have any suggestions? If you're saying no, you need to give me a counter offer. It does sound like negotiation, but it's just, what do you think about that? And I'll go back and say, well, that's what he thinks about that. So what
Yeah.
there's, my opinion doesn't come into it. I'm just the facilitator
Yeah.
because they can't listen to each other. You can see it when you have a couple in front of you. They continue what they're doing when they're at home, if they're still living together, or how they used to. And I have to say, let's stop here. You're going back to your
Yeah. Like
old
that.
habits.
Yeah.
Let's move forward and be respectful of each other. So I'm really like impartial and just getting them to discuss things. Does that,
It
do you
does. Yeah.
understand?
Gosh. Yeah. It sounds like I'm gonna say patience on everyone's behalf to make that work. Still.
Yeah. I sometimes want to bang their heads together, but they're on screen, so I can't.
Yeah. No, there'll be too much proof for that as well. What an interesting podcast. Thank you, Sarah Jane.
You're
I'll
welcome.
I'll put some of your content in the description of this episode. You've got your
Thank
own
you.
pod too that you do. People can check you out and hopefully reach out with any direct questions they do have. Yeah, maybe they can find a way of reversing the damage they've done by buying that expensive lawnmower. Fabulous. Thank you very much, and
Thank you,
I
Ben.
hope to have you on again soon.
Yes, thank you. Have a lovely day. Bye.